Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome to my overview of King Arthur Legion 9. So for those not across it, I do overviews and reviews on the channel pretty much daily. When I do an overview, it's just a look at the first 2 hours of the game. Steam reckons that you can make your mind up in 2 hours whether you want to keep or refund, and I kind of agree. Broadly speaking, I would say 20 hours in, you're not going to change your mind about something 2 hours in. So the idea is I can cover more games this way. It's broad strokes, short, punchy, keep it under 10 minutes, and just to inform you, and maybe you want to follow it, wishlist it, what have you. Also, it helps for me to soft triage things, figure out what I will and won't review with the time that I have left. So a little bit of required reading. This is coming out of Neocore Games, who I have a bit of a soft spot for, but they've got a bit going against them as well. And in a way, I kind of respect their hustle. They stand their ground. They charge an outrageous amount of money for their games, but you know, they don't seem to be backing down, and I guess they're still in business, so who can really judge? And specifically, King Arthur Legion 9 is a pseudo-sequel. It might not be super apparent. King Arthur, I believe it's A Knight's Tale? I'm not 100% sure. But the main game that this is based upon is something that's got a bit of a cult following in my little community. We've streamed a bit of it over the years, and I'm really quite fond of it. So just to front load, this game is very much a spin-off, almost like those side expansion type DLC games that you'd get more back in the day. You know, it's like a standalone expansion. That's actually exactly the way to describe it, because it occurs to me Neocore, who also did 40k Martyr, did a standalone spin-off expansion called Prophecy. And I believe that was very, very well received, actually. So if you liked or didn't like the first King Arthur game, that will inform heavily what you think of this. Can you go in blind and play this without having played the first one? Yes, you could, technically. That first game ramped so hard into the end game that things like the DLC expansion, I think they had sort of a 2.0 release that I played, and that was really overwhelming coming back into it. This is not. So you could go into this, but I would also argue, and as much as I enjoy these guys, why would you? This game is very much for someone that really likes the original King Arthur game and didn't get burnt out. So just to be clear, some groundwork. Neocore does lots of different genres. Martyr, I mentioned before, is more of a, you know, ARPG in the vein of Path of Exile, but set in the 40k universe. It's very cool. They've done other things like, what was it, like Death Trap Dungeon or something like that, and Van Helsing. So they've done a bunch of different things. Broadly speaking, I would say their work is fairly high quality. Like all the art and work that's gone into it, and from what I can recall, there's no real bugs. The voice acting is usually pretty, well, I suppose you could say, you know, technically high quality, but always just so weird and janky and meme-worthy and divorced from the script, and there's no difference here. They're doing their best and they're playing it straight, but it feels weird and janky, so I guess that Neocore charm is there, but this would put off some people who are a bit prudish about that. Given that you're playing as Legion 9, like a Roman undead legion coming back from hell, they've decided to like muffle a lot of their voices, presumably because they don't have lips, and give ethereal overtuning. So they've taken all the audio and put stuff on top of it, which kind of takes away from it in my take. But yeah, look, just to cover, King Arthur is a turn-based tactics type game. You run out, you do a mission. In the original game, you collect Knights of the Round Table. You play as Mordred. I'm not even going to go into the fiction, but it's this sort of post-apocalyptic version of King Arthur after the fall, after Mordred and Arthur kill each other, and they get brought back to life. So it's very much sort of a dark fantasy twist and an extension of the lore, and generally speaking, works really well. It's kind of cool. And then you build up your base in between missions, and much like a lot of Neocore's games, the mechanics are solid, but they're not exactly genre-breaking. They're almost simplistic, or I would just say serviceable, right? And they ask a very hefty price tag. Now, I don't know what the price of this is going out, and I'm releasing this up against embargo, so make your value judgment there, but I'm assuming it's going to be on brand overpriced, as all Neocore games are. And like I said, if you're someone that's outside of this bubble, this will be a shock. If you're not, you've probably already made the deal with the devil that it's expensive. So that's my one criticism, and it's always been my one criticism in Neocore games. I really like what they make, I do, but generally speaking, it's solid, passable. You know, it's as double A. Bland is a horrible term to say because I enjoy these games immensely, but they're definitely not breaking any systems or boundaries or anything like that. And they're generally very, very expensive up against their contemporaries. Why have I set it all up like this? Because this game is just more King Arthur, for better and for worse. A lot of assets, a lot of the music's still exactly the same. Obviously, they've got that Roman tinge to it, and there are new tracks and voice acting and all that. But the gameplay loop, I think you could say, identical. You go in, you do the same runs, and between each sort of run through a map, doing your tactical battles, you go and you upgrade a base. If anything, I would actually say a lot of the systems are dumbed down. There is a Roman twist to the sort of base. You're rebuilding Nova Roma, so like, you know, it's renamed, rebranded. But from what I can tell, a lot of the mechanics of all the different little workstations are the same. You still got like a wizard's tower, a blacksmith, but there seems to be less of it. The morality system, which was an interesting part of the first King Arthur, is two-dimensional, quite literally, on an X and Y axis. So that was kind of cool that you could go, oh geez, now you're really testing me. I believe it was good and evil. And then there was also pagan versus Christian, which, you know, these were two large religious bearings of that period. This doesn't have that at all. This is pretty much evil and good, or whatever it's called, life and death. It would seem, you know, you are coming back from being a damned legion, and your dude seems like a quite cheery dude for an undead guy, but you still sort of represent death and are kind of the herald of that. And I've already come up against characters that have, you know, kind of miffed that they have to team up with me because they fancy themselves more life balanced. Honestly, it feels like a bit of a stretch. The whole thing is a bit of a stretch. Like I said, I'm not having an unpleasant time, and I could see myself chipping away at it. Oh, another mechanic, like they don't have, I can't remember what it is, but there were two types of health originally, vitality and the other one. And the interesting nuance of that is one was more like sort of long-term injuries that would need to be healed between missions, and the other one was sort of more in the mission. Now, this has done away with the actually interesting, nuanced, strategic health component where you would have to rest dudes between missions. And now it's like, well, you guys are undead, so if they fall in battle, and they will, they just stand back up and they get all their health back at the end of the battle. So the theme is, it's almost exactly the same as King Arthur, except reskinned, and except in many of the mechanics, they've stripped it right back. I'm not trying to be down on the game or bash it. I know it might seem like it's coming across that way, but if you're thinking it's going to be a radical different game, I am a little bit disappointed. I would have liked, you know, from Martyr into King Arthur, I would have liked to have seen maybe not a sequel. I enjoy studios that genre hop, but you know, I can't judge it on what it's not, only what it is. And I'm expecting it to be quite expensive. The original King Arthur I looked up as something like $65 Australian, which is very sort of high AA price. I doubt this will be that much because it seems to very much know it is a spin-off side expansion thing. But I still, you know, if I was guessing, I'd say it's probably gonna be $40 or something like that. And for what is basically more King Arthur reskinned and stripped back, I feel like the only people that are really gonna get this are the most hardcore people, or someone who maybe stumbled into Neocore. This might be their first one, and it, you know, becomes their entry point, in which case that will work. You know, the combat again is very accessible, it's not overbearing. However, they have done away, like it is sort of accelerated class 101. They pretty much give you your 4 stack of heroes almost immediately, whereas the original King Arthur sort of drip-fed the mechanics much slower. This kind of assumes you've played the previous game, but still puts you in at like level 1. Anyway, I don't want to waffle any more than that. King Arthur Legion 9, it's fine. It's serviceable. It's more of what you would expect. I'm not 100% sure who's going to pick it up. And that would be my closing thought. As much as I enjoyed King Arthur, I couldn't clock it because it becomes such a grind, and the answer to escalating that game is give your dude bloody 5 rows of health bars, and I felt it to become a little bit ridiculous, and it did kind of wear me out. Doesn't mean, and honestly, I just put it down when I was done with it. I really enjoyed it. The point that I'm leading to is the guy that this game's aimed at, the most hardcore King Arthur fan, has probably already worn himself out with the way that the structure of the first game went, and how even the most hardcore grinder is probably just going to get beat down from it over time. But again, that's a little bit more of a personal value judgment. No more waffling. Game's pretty cool. Buy beware. Check the price as well when it goes up. Team, might just leave it there for the time being. I'll catch you guys on the next one.